Welcome to BWI Live. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. We've got a fun, jam-packed show for you today. I even put a timer on myself for certain segments. We'll see how that goes. Because we have to get to a special guest later in the show. Fitz and I sat down with Andy Staples of On 3. He's going to be joining us to discuss the national perspective on Penn State football. As I say later, we're in our bubble. We are in the trenches with you talking about Penn State football day in and day out. And so we thought it'd be good to, pull our head out of the sand, look around and see what other people think about the program and get some big picture views on a lot of topics. So that's coming up at the end of the show. But stay tuned because there's a bunch of great stuff before then, including Fitz has a recruiting update. We're going to have a couple of quick mailbag questions. And of course, we're starting today with a question about Penn State football and the players you know and love and the ones that are going to make a big impact on next season. Once again, today's topic is brought to you by Nate Bauer and the excellent writing he did over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com earlier this weekend. So, subscribe, all that stuff. The preamble is out of the way, and Nate, we're coming to you for basketball. We have some news today, some breaking news. I'm not going to play this. I'm not going to play the graphic, but what's the latest on Penn State basketball?
Honestly, I just want to know if Andy Staples is pro 2014 playoff or not. Everybody's anti.
You got to talk about it. Find out. We are going to talk about that.
Did.
I hate how anti everyone is. It's not that big of a deal. Just relax.
The funny thing, Nate, is in that conversation we had later, I could hear your responses because I know your opinion on this particular matter. So it was funny. It was funny. You were a part of the conversation without being there.
It's about representation, guys. Either slash the number of participants of D1 football, right? FBS slash it to 60, or have a fair representation. That's it. That's all it is just get more, because there's no other sport that takes itself seriously that has a 4% representation in its postseason. Anyway, Penn State hired Dwayne Stevens to be an assistant coach for the basketball team. And I know the vibe around Penn State basketball isn't great right now. What? I know they didn't have a good year. It was Mike Rhodes' third season. They didn't have good players, right? That was kind of the big issue is not only were they not good on the floor and they got blown out in a lot of games, they didn't have enough good players. And so it's like a multi-pronged issue, because it would be one thing if they were funding the program to be competitive and then you could just blame Mike Rhodes. But it's not that simple because they didn't have the money to pay for good players. Anyway, for as bad as that has been, Dwayne Stevens is a great hire. She's awesome. He's been a tremendous assistant coach through his career. He's got 19 years on Tom Izzo's bench. He got his first stint as a head coach at Western Michigan over the last 4 years, and that did not go well. But that's okay, because this guy has the chops to recruit and knows the people that you need to know, in terms of player acquisition, and then also has developed some really, really good players, like guys that you know and love, right? Beloved NBA player, Draymond Green, right?
Beloved. Yes.
Beloved.
Everyone knows it's very hard to win in Kalamazoo. It's the oldest tripe in college basketball. So it actually is.
It's true. It's true.
Okay.
So anyway, they did it. They hired somebody, and the bench staff is filled out. They still have not filled Joe Crispin's role, but that's there are no rules. You can have as many people coach and help with it. It doesn't matter. So in any case, the bench role is filled, and now Penn State basketball can continue along with its offseason.
All right, and Nate will keep you updated with that over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, because that's where he lives on the message board. He lives there as one of our esteemed writers. And Nate, we're going to come back to you again to start the show, because we are basing today's exercise off of something you wrote about this weekend. Of Penn State made some decisions in this offseason to retain players from the 2025 roster, players that they wanted to have moving forward under Matt Campbell and his new staff. of that group of players, who are the ones that are actually going to be important in 2026? Who are the players that are going to make an impact? So you have an offense and a defensive roster that you picked from, and we are going to give our top 3 that we think are going to, make an impact this year. Normally on the rundown, we fill out the rundown, but we didn't do that. So let's just start with number 3, and we'll go around the room and figure out who's going to pick who.
Number 3.
All right, Fitz, I'm going to start with you. I've learned my lesson. So you can't pick everyone. And who are you going to pick for number 3 on the list of players you think are going to be important from the retained players on the roster from 2025?
And we're counting down, right?
To the number 1 player, yes.
To the number 1 player. Oh, boy.
Yes.
So I get 3, or we're going all back and forth here? Because this is like a snake draft.
We're all going to... It's a snake draft, or yeah, sure, it's a snake
draft. By the way,
draft. So we'll
behind
all do
the fourth
3.
wall here, we just love to hear T. Frank's games and then completely mess with him and do it live.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I'm gonna go
Brian Barker.
Jamir Joseph, number 3. Corner is very important because you got to put these guys out on an island. If Danton Lynn does what I think Danton Lynn's going to do, they've got some good corners. Jamir Joseph, not a starter in name, but he's going to be one of those guys when we go into the season, they're going to be like, we've got 3 starters or 4 starters with Zion Tracy. And they're going to treat him as such. I think he's going to play a lot along with Darius Dixon there, Davian Collins. But I think this is a guy that can do a lot for you in your secondary as a redshirt freshman too. He played some nickel last year. He's going to do the same this year. Maybe not as important on the inside this year because you look at the depth at corner, and it's fine when you take a look at just numbers. But when you take a look at cutting it down to nickels, cutting it down to the outside guys, outside is a little bit thinner than you probably would have expected just looking at the names on paper. And I think Jamir Joseph is a really good player. I think he's going to continue to progress. I think Daryus Dixon was a guy that stuck out last year as, he's a sophomore now, but we think of him as a veteran returning starter. And that's not something that happens all that often. Joseph kind of took a back seat, but I think that he is close to as talented as Daryus Dixon. And there are days when he's better. So I think that Jamir Joseph is going to be a guy that you look at as a real contributor here, and he can also play on special teams. So I'm excited to see him play. I've always been really, really high on Jamir Joseph, and I think that corner room under Terry Smith, probably not going to miss much of a beat. Lost a couple guys from last year, but at the same time, I'm going to keep bringing back talent and keep stacking it. And T. Frank, as we said before, fascinated to see how they stack probably 7 guys into 5 spots.
It's interesting that you mention a couple of those things, and something I was talking about over the weekend with people on the message board, and something I want to run by you is, so Jamir Joseph, I would agree quality depth player is a number 3 or 2A, however you want to look at it. But beyond that, like they've talked about having Zion Tracy play on the outside as well. And I know maybe I'm going for the embarrassment of riches portion of like nitpicking, but to have nobody really pushing for that, kind of that depth position where if one of those guys get hurt, like it is really like you've got 3 starters and then I don't know, like a lot of really young players at the position. So, just how do you view that particular depth conversation when it comes to not just Joseph, but the overall depth of that position?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question because Terry Smith will bench guys too. Like when guys get beat, he has shown a penchant to bench those guys. And, AJ Harris, we were talking about as a first round pick 12 months ago. And now all of a sudden he's on Indiana's roster trying to work his way back and sort of rehab his career. So like, you don't know how it's going to go because corner is so ridiculously hard to play that you can get burnt and all of a sudden turn around and things are much different than you drew them up to be. So Nate, I see that look. There were people talking about AJ Harris, the first round pick. I don't think we were the ones to do that, but like,
no, that was me
pretty high.
No, my issue is like rehabbing his image on the defending national champion football team.
Yeah. It's a thing.
Because he's like talented and
that's a pretty good landing spot.
He's unbelievably talented,
really
but he
talented.
did not live up to that last year. Yeah.
Okay.
Nate, who are you going with?
Let's go.
Who are you going with in number 3? Throw some haymakers.
I don't know. Well, The problem is, are we putting them into the document as we're doing this, or like
you've taken up all 3 of your slots? T. Frank.
Oh no, that's what I'm saying. Do I have to surprise
yes,
you?
the idea was that we would all list one player for each position before the show started, which is why you get the document 2 hours before the show starts. But
yeah, I know. But
here
then,
we are.
But then the choices aren't actually the choices. You know what I mean? Like because if your selection is taken, then you have to.
That's why I didn't put anything in, so you guys could pick, and then I would just pick the remainders.
Okay.
That's why I ended up with Jamir Joseph.
Well, anyway, listen, I'm gonna go where I want to go, which is Koby Howard, because I like Koby Howard and I love the conversation. So let's go with Koby Howard. Look, I do think that there is, maybe a preemptive. We know. Right, because they're like nobody has allowed for any mystery that Chase Sowell and Brett Eskilton are the top 2. Right, like that is in your face. Matt Campbell has said it. There's no mystery to that. However, Koby Howard's got a great opportunity to be much more involved. Obviously, much more involved than he was last year. To take a little bit of that end of season momentum and carry it into this year. Matt Campbell talked about consistency as being the big thing with him. I do think maybe there's a little bit, and I'm part of this, but that wasn't really the point of the exercise for what I wrote, of like excluding Zay Robinson, right? Amari and Jackson, I think that's a nice story, and he can help. I don't know. That's up to you guys in terms of what vibe you're getting there as to whether or not he is realistic to like supplant, right?
Yeah, Fitz, I didn't get that conversation from when I was trying to figure out like how spring went for those receivers. Did you?
I would say for Amari Jackson, like back end of the 2 deep, but like the six man 2 deep instead of the 4-man rotation they're probably going to go with.
Like Koby Howard last year.
Maybe below Koby Howard last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like
so Koby Howard.
I'm excited to see him. It's just I don't think he's like, again, what we were saying about, or what I was saying about Koby last year, it's not going to fundamentally change the passing game. Like, you're looking at the 2 guys from Iowa State. You're looking at Koby, Zay Robinson, maybe some Karan Brookins, but that's basically what you're looking at right now, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a fair one. And Koby Howard, to your point, Nate, I'll just kind of reinforce what you're saying here. Is there is an opportunity with Koby, and we'll just, again, we're limiting this to the conversation about the players from Penn State from last year that they retained and why they retained them, right? And kind of the impact they can have on the roster this year. Koby Howard can give them the balance to go from 11 personnel to 12 personnel from game to game. If you find a matchup you like maybe you go up against a team that you don't think their nickel is any good, suddenly you have a guy that, even if Koby Howard isn't playing in the slot, he can be out on the field, and you can now create mismatches and matchups where you get Chase Sowell in the slot. Koby Howard can play outside. He can play inside. You've got that versatility to allow this team to really play in 2 different worlds effectively and equally effectively as long as everyone continues to develop. Like, there's still some TBD and some pending things about that. One of the biggest TBD and pending things that I think everyone is taking for granted here is Cooper Cousins. Cooper Cousins had a really slow start to the Pinstripe Bowl. Didn't look particularly good in the first quarter and a half, and then knocked the rust off and really started to come on as the game went on. But we have basically a half of football from Cooper Cousins playing last year. And so the expectation is that he is going to be the starting guard, right or left, probably the right guard this year for Penn State football. And I think that's right. I think that there's nobody to challenge him, but there is this conversation of he's got to turn the corner. This is the year for him to turn it on. And I think this maybe fits my mistake in just taking Cousins as a known quantity. We didn't hear a lot about Cooper Cousins during spring football. And part of what we heard a lot about Koby Howard because every single week somebody asked about Koby Howard because fans want to know about Koby Howard. Cooper Cousins feels like that omnipresent thing that everyone just is taking for granted. And we didn't really learn that much about where he is. At least I didn't. And that, that's on me.
No, I think that's fair. And you look at what his career has been to now. We thought he would be starter or more of a mix to start last year, and then TJ Shanahan comes in and gets that job. And TJ Shanahan is a little bit older, not much. It's not like he was a senior that came in and got his due diligence or did his due diligence and got those reps. It's like those two were in a competition, and that that's the way it went. Last spring he was in a competition with JB Nelson, and he won that competition, but I don't think anybody came out of it was like overwhelmed with where he's at. So, you look at the high school rankings and everything like that. And I love Coop. He's great. He's a great leader. He's a great guy to have just in the face of your program. But at the same time, like we still need to find out if he's good. And I don't think that's a condemnation or anything like that. It's just, we haven't seen enough of him to say that, he's the guy that I think we all picture in our minds.
You know what I do know is good, and that is taking vacation and unplugging. And that's why you should consider this summer for your vacation plans Boulder Point Lake House. Boulder Point Lake House is a Penn State family-owned vacation property in Maine on an 11-chain lake. Literally, I think it's like Lake something Maine is what is the place where it's called. You cannot get more of a picturesque setting. And the family, by the way, Penn State fans, they watch the show, and they're advertising with Blue White Illustrated because the almighty algorithm doesn't like new things. And they have put this up here, and they want to give Penn State fans and anybody an experience unlike anything else this summer. A brand new architect-designed house in rural Maine. And I say rural, and I don't mean that as a derogatory thing. I mean that as a selling point. Boulder Point Lake House is on 280 feet of lakefront property with a private dock. So you can go boating, you can go fishing, you can enjoy the wildlife. They are loons, I was told, by people that are fans of the show and subscribers to the website. In Maine, the birds that you hear when you're out there, they are not herons or whatever I said last time, so I needed to correct myself. It's a pet-friendly place, dog-friendly specifically. And if you like to do like sky watching in the summer or anything like that, they have the darkest skies in the East Coast, so you can see the Milky Way, and you can go out and enjoy just every facet of nature. So there's a whole bunch of things to do, and you can check them out on their Facebook page. So they're offering BWI listeners the option to book directly to avoid fees on the major booking websites. You can go to Boulder Point Lake House on Facebook. The link is in the description of this video, and you can check them out there. Of course, I need to remind you, like the video, we're going to get into a lot more here on the show today. Subscribe here to the YouTube channel. And if you want some sweet Roback stuff, we've had an ongoing promo code in the description of the video. Since last October, we have a partnership with Roback. It's a new code. BWI20 is the new code. So if you want one of these, looks really nice. Link is in the description of the video with the promo code, so make sure you get in there and you get all your cool swag for this summer, because you want to look good on your trip out into rural Maine. Okay, let's get to number 2.
Number 2.
Nate, who is your number 2 most important retained player that's going to have an impact on the roster this year?
Can I just say I was sure that you called the advertiser loons? I was like, oh no.
They might be.
That's the end of this partnership.
They're trusting me, so they might be loons, but no, those are the birds.
Yeah. Well, look, T. Frank, we have an issue here. We've arrived at a deadlock. If I use my pick for number 2,
it's fine. It's a signifier of importance. I think the player is more important. That's all.
Okay. All right. Well, then it's Kamaju.
Okay. Why? Why do you think Yvonne Kemaju is the guy?
They need a pass rush, because I don't. Well, first of all, they're not going to get it from the defensive tackles. That's not what they do. That's not why they're there. You have educated me. I've seen the light. And so if they're not going to get that from the interior, which, I mean, you're not supposed to anyway, except for previous coaches who wanted that. Right. Then you got to get it from those defensive ends. And, I don't know that, as Ezeogu, I'm not sure that that's exactly what he does.
Yeah.
Right. That's not
Fitz, I do want to ask you about that. And you bring up a great point, Nate. I didn't mean to cut you off, but just like
No,
that
go
has
ahead.
been something I've been thinking about is because Ezeogu has not had the opportunity to rush off the edge, and because he is the size that he is, and we haven't seen him play this position at his new weight, I think a lot of us are kind of like, he's a starter, yada, 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 but the guy that's got to get pressure is one of these two young guys they retained, whether it's Granville or Kemju. Like, are we looking beyond Ezeogu fairly or unfairly in this situation?
If you ask him unfairly, he wants to rush
Sure.
the passer. Like we talked to him in February, and he's like, I'm an edge. I rush the passer. Okay, man, you're 280 pounds. You can do whatever you want. But it's a matter of getting there. And I think that, just there are a few more guys that are cut out to get there. Kemju, one of them, Max Granville, the other one, and you could look at some different, I think Alex McPherson might have that ability as well. We haven't seen enough of it right now. So like, I think it's going to come from other people, but I think he's going to be out there, and I think he's going to give it a shot. I mean, he had 1 sack last year at Iowa State, but this playing a three-man front is, I don't want to say completely different, but it's pretty different than he's used to. And I think the stats tell a different story of what he can be. But if he's a 4.5 sack guy, I think that's fine. I don't think he's a guy that's going to fundamentally change games as a pass rusher, but I think he's going to be out there. So that's what I would go with. But I think that Kemju is like the all-around guy, but he provides a little bit more snap off the edge. He provides you with the ability to get there. He's shown that a little bit as a true freshman. I think he's going to continue to do that. They're over the moon about him. They think he's a really good prospect. But it's just a matter of taking that and going from being good as a freshman to being good in general. I think he can do that. And I think that's why I think he's an obvious 1 or 2 pick in this exercise.
Yeah. Who are you going with? Oh, sorry, Nate, you got something.
Well, I was just gonna say with the Ezeogu conversation that when I did talk to Bill Seals, the guy that covers Iowa State, like he came as he was a prospect in high school as a passer, like that's what he was, but they didn't run that system, so they threw 80 pounds on him or 70 pounds to bulk him up, and the vibe that I got, or at least, what was communicated to me, was like, that was never a fit, that they always felt like it was kind of the wrong, that wasn't what he does. Right. Yeah. And so he was just kind of
well enough, but wasn't that guy. Yeah.
Square peg, round hole.
But now as Kemju in high, he was 235 pounds, I think, in high school. So like, I think he was a typical 4-3 defensive end prospect. It's just a matter of what they need in that 3-man front is to be a 5-tech big tackle, a big end, smaller tackle. And that's what he was. So, but yeah, I mean, there's no lack of confidence. I mean, T. Frank, we sat at the same table, I think, and talked to him, and he was adamant that he's going to be a pass rusher. Now, I want to see it before I believe it, but at the same time, it's not a situation where you're pulling that guy off on every third down to throw in Max Granville or throw in Deshaun Burnett, LeVar Arrington, one of the designated pass rushers, if you will. So I think that he's going to have the opportunity to do so. And I think he'll be fine. It's just a matter. I don't see his numbers or his ceiling numbers being as high as those other guys.
He did have some opportunities to rush off the edge in his career where he was, in a third down situation, he's outside the tackle. So it's not like he never got to, but when you're doing it at 280 pounds versus 270, like that is a difference. And that's just kind of where my mind went when we're talking about these guys and kind of passing up an important player, because I think we all kind of agree about that. Fitz, who is your number 2 player here?
I mean, it's Kemju as well. I mean, you can't, to me, 1 and 2 are pretty clear in this exercise. You can look at maybe a guy like Granville who's coming off of an injury. He potentially has the ability to be a guy that can give you some snap off the edge. And once he's healthy, like that's a guy that they were looking to contribute last year and play a lot. So like if he's healthy, yeah, absolutely. He can be there. It gives you a little bit more of a cushion there at defensive end, which is a spot where we still have questions, frankly. It's about effectiveness. It's not so much about depth because there's a lot of bodies there, but it's about effectiveness, how they can use it, how they're going to use it, how it's going to combine with how they use the linebackers. Caleb Bacon's going to come up in a question later. It's going to be a situation that I think just looks a little bit different than your typical 4-2, 5, 4-3 than that you've been used to at Penn State the last couple of years. So they're going to have that ability, and Max Granville is going to give them just a little bit more off the edge. It's just a matter of out of sight, out of mind. We haven't talked about him in a while because, he's got to get better.
Healthy.
Shameless plug here for my film breakdown from yesterday of talking about this kind of topic exactly and how Yvonne Kemiju fits into this. For clarity, he's my number one player because I think from a defensive perspective, the things he has to do for this defense that we just outlined, I think he's the guy that can do it, that has the size to play a versatile 5-tech role, play some run snaps on the interior, and be a pass rusher from both positions, by the way. The strength to rush over guards and win quickly there, or the fluidity and enough twitch outside to be a guy that can rush off the edge and do all of those things all at once. Eziogu is the wild card here because of what we just talked about, but the guy that obviously has all of those skills, 255-pound Yvonne Kemiju. He's my number one. But I think you guys are right. He's in this top three. I'm going to go with a different number one here in just 1 second, but I'll let you guys pick your favorite number ones here first.
Number 1.
Nate, once again, you quickly picked your number one seed. So who are you going with here on this one?
Yeah, I did it. The starting left tackle has never played a down in college football. So
it's a big one. That's a big one.
That's
a big one.
That is what was less important last year, more important this year. It's interesting because I don't think that there's any there doesn't really seem to be any trepidation about it. And I think that maybe certainly from my standpoint, there's like some dogma attached to it of like, I've seen the blind side. I know how important that position is. But he legitimately just doesn't have any snaps. And I think that certainly it would be fair to expect of a redshirt freshman a little bit of a learning curve.
Yes. Yeah.
But you're talking about a guy who has like, I don't know if you guys saw the Taylor Mauser quotes, but like just extreme levels of wow, right? Like, oh man, like this guy's different. I think the comparison was just like how quick he is on his feet for his size. That is just remarkable for Malachi. And so, to be able to wrangle that athleticism and natural talent and ability, right? A la Olu a little bit, maybe.
I think maybe a better run blocker. Like you never know until you find out, right? So there's always the bias towards the guy who hasn't done anything yet, but 331 pounds. Olu was known in his NFL draft profile as an elite pass protector, but not a guy who was getting after it in the run game. And I think injuries were part of that throughout his career, but also there was that aspect of Olu that was there. Goodman has already demonstrated to these guys a level of viciousness with his hands that they've specifically mentioned his run blocking and his power that might give him maybe a little more of a complete profile.
So yeah, he's really important.
Yeah. Olu played 85 snaps as a true freshman in 2021, and a lot of those came in the Outback Bowl, I believe. He's got more experience, or he had more experience, but that's the kind of turnaround you're looking for. I mean, he went close to 600 snaps the following year. So like it was like pedal to the metal, all in on Olu, and I feel the same way about Goodman. You've got similar profiles there. I don't want to step ahead and say better run blocker, but like we think that he's got the physical ability to do that because he's a special talent. I think he's a special talent. So like it's advantageous for Penn State to have retained him, and certainly has as high of a ceiling as anybody that's on that offensive line.
Yeah, and Anthony Donko also went from a guy who played as, preserved his red shirt and then started. The problem was he didn't make it through the season, so we don't really have the same recollection of what he was that year because Nolan Rucci replaced him due to injury late in the year. Okay, so Fitz, who's your number one player?
It's Goodman. I mean, it's really no getting around it. Starting left tackle. Sorry, yeah, I hate to team up in here. Nate. Like I said, I try to get creative there on number 3. And we're doing different exercises to get to the same pump here. But I'm going to go with Goodman because I think he's got worlds of potential out there at left tackle. And honestly, the world is on his shoulders there. You, like Kemiju, there's not many people that are going to step into that role and be able to hold it up like he potentially can. And I think that that's, when you take a look at this roster, I think it's incredibly balanced and deep for what it is, a team that was almost completely rebuilt this offseason. But at the same time, there are spots where you got to pick and choose, and left tackle is not one of the ones that you want to be dicey at. I think he'll be fine. But at the same time, I think there might be a couple growing pains in there for a redshirt freshman, and that's fine.
Yep. I'm going to go with my number one pick. I'm gonna zig while everyone's zagging. Because I'm going to go to the back end, I'm going to go to Daryus Dixson. We talk about Daryus Dixson as if he's this longtime starter. He was not a starter last year. He became a guy that played, for sure, and then he started in the Pinstripe Bowl because guys transferred. And so there is a level of this where he was retained for a good reason. I think he's going to have a good year, but as a sophomore, it also relates to the other guys we've talked about already. Does Penn State going to have a good pass rush this year? Even if they get something out of their defensive ends, they may have to blitz a lot. And when you blitz, you put pressure on your secondary. And so your secondary, if Penn State can have two lockdown corners on the outside, and you can have Davian Collins and Daryus Dixon playing up to what I think everyone is expecting from them from the trajectory standpoint, then it helps mitigate some of the issues they have up front in this pass rush question that we have right now. So I'm just going to the back end, to the other most important position when it comes to passing game, and I'm looking at Daryus Dixon as a retained player who needs to take that step from really good sophomore who, flashed great potential to a guy who now takes that next step and is a Big Ten standout for this defense to really make everything work and make Penn State fans feel better about the defense, which, again, we're going to get to in just 1 minute. Fitz, we're going to do a quick recruiting update, then we're going to get to the mailbag. So stay tuned. Nate will be back in just 1 second to get to that, and then Andy Staples coming up in just a little bit. We got to get to this because it is decision day for Aiden Gibson. He's going to be making his announcement. Fitz is at 7 p.m. tonight. So Penn State Target is making a major decision on the running back front. So take us into what we know and what to expect and what you're seeing from this week in Penn State recruiting.
Yeah, Aiden Gibson, a guy that's 4-star on all three services right now, number 258 on the Rivals industry ranking, number 17 nationally, is going to decide this evening. All signs point to Penn State, and Penn State probably going to take 2 running backs in this class, and that could be a development that happens pretty quickly. But Gibson is one of their top 3 targets, along with Trey Segarra and Gary Walker from down south, and he came up this spring, was pretty well blown away by what Penn State had to offer. We said after that trip that they were his leader, and they seem to have stood the test of time. I know Rutgers made quite a run at him with a pretty nice offer, but Penn State came back. Savon Huggins seems to be on the verge of getting this one across the line. Of course, never say never in recruiting, but you got to like where Penn State stands heading to that announcement this evening.
All right. So other things that just from a perspective that we learned about this weekend, Jamir Dean was contacted by Georgia. We talked a little bit about this week. What do we know about the situation? Is there danger of a flip here with Jamir Dean, the Tennessee wide receiver who committed to Penn State recently?
I would say not imminently, but yeah, I mean, anytime that a receiver from down south picks up a Georgia offer, you're gonna take notice, and he's gonna visit Georgia. He's going to consider Georgia, and I would not be shocked if he ended up flipping to Georgia. But I think it's gonna be one of those ones where he takes his time. He's got a couple of official visits set up, and maybe we'll sort it out after that. But if you're Penn State, you can't feel wonderful about it because Georgia is pretty good at that sort of thing. And I think that's one you're just gonna have to watch as a Penn State fan and I don't know, clutch your pearls and say, hopefully he can stick on this side. So I think that Penn State does have a shot to keep him. I mean, I think that we will automatically go to the worst case scenario. I think Penn State does have a shot to keep him. He, was very interested and has a long-term relationship with Kashif Moore, going back to his Connecticut days. But at the same time, I mean, you got to look at the realistic nature of the situation. Say Georgia's a giant down there, and it's going to take some to get that one back on board. He seems, he's saying the right things, with on the public sphere and also to Penn State, but got to be realistic about this situation. I believe Georgia's going to be a massive opponent right there.
Okay, last thing, and as this is an open question, what else is going on this week that we need to know about before we're going to get to our recruiting show on Thursday, which you can catch 10 a.m. live here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel?
Yeah, we still got quarterback recruiting, right? That's the interest of everyone right now. Jake Waters up at Tabor Academy right now, actually, to look at Peter Bork, but Will Wood remains the guy that I think is most likely to end up at Penn State's quarterback in the class of 2027. So I think that, this is one that I keep saying it. I was thinking of this last night, T. Frank. I started saying like a week and a half ago, it's going to wrap up soon. And we're still in that window. It just doesn't feel like it because you're just, every day you want a quarterback.
Dog years. Yeah.
Yeah. Dog years is a great way to put it because you're talking about that idle time. You're talking about waiting, when in reality, it's been a week, 10 days, something like that. So I think that Penn State's still in a good spot here. Boston College still sitting there with Will Wood. Haven't been on since Penn State went up to see him. They sent the entire offensive staff to his house on Friday night for their second visit this spring. The trip to Tabor today to see Bork is the first time that they're going to see Bork this spring. So, I mean, just looking at some logical data points here, Penn State seems pretty well all in on Will Wood right now. So we'll continue to monitor that and figure out when he's going to do whatever he decides to do. But that's my read on the situation right now.
All right. That'll do it today. Really quick, Fitz's recruiting update. I want to bring in Nate. We're going to come back to you. We've got a very important thing for you to tell us about, and that is Anti-Fragile Brewing Company.
I have a recruiting question then. Can I ask it afterwards?
Sure.
Okay.
If you read the spot, well, you can do it.
I'm not gonna read. I don't need to read anything. This is my spot. Anti-Fragile Brewing Company, downtown State College, East Calder Way. Plenty of parking. If you have a designated driver, want to get all that mumbo out of the way to tell you about the best beer in State College. They've got an ever rotating board. When you come in, the friendliest faces to greet you there, and then you can order literally anything you want, and it's going to be good. And you know how I know? Because I've had it all. It is an excellent selection of well-crafted, like painstakingly well-crafted by the brewers down there at Anti-Fragile. They've got cheesesteaks out front, which coincidentally also the best in State College, with their Gemelli Bakery now added to the portfolio. They've got breakfast stuff there. Like bagels and croissants and bread and coffee from Rothrock. It is, it's almost like they took, those, places that have like cafeterias, like a mall cafeteria, but instead of like really crappy fast food, it's like all the best of what State College has to offer in terms of product. And they put it all in one spot with, again, the nicest people there.
I believe they call that curated. They have curated the best of State College for you.
It's genuinely like no joke. It's incredible. And I love it when people say to me that they went there because we talk about it so much on this show. Because it's like, if I just saw you in the street and you asked me for one recommendation of something to do in State College, it would be to go to Anti-Fragile Brewing Company. I'm like,
so make Nate's day.
The creamery's good too, but still, I'm just saying.
Make Nate's day. Go to Anti-Fragile, and if you see him there, tell him it's because he said so. And also, if he's not there, still tell him it's because Nate said so. Let's get to today's BWI mailbag. Okay, maybe it's because I was talking about it on Monday, but lots of questions about defensive ends today. We talked about it at the beginning of the show. Shenny Football, who's a new member on the site, or relatively new anyway, and a new question asker anyway here on the YouTube show, says, who do you think leads the defense in sacks next year, and with how many? I'm not going to hold you to the who many part, or how many, the who many,
the talking,
the how many. Fitz, what do you think? Who do you think is the biggest threat, and who do you think gets the most sacks next year for Penn State football?
Going to go out of left field here and go with Caleb Bacon. This is a guy that
Ooh.
I see as a rotational linebacker with what they've got coming back. We're going to see Cooper Ebel in the middle. We're going to see Tony Rojas, who actually I think is going to up his sack total this year, based on what I've heard they want to do with him. But Caleb Bacon's a guy that they're going to move around a lot. And they're going to play him at end, play him at stand-up end, play him at the traditional linebacker, blitz him. He led Iowa State in sacks last year, just 3. I mean, Iowa State wasn't a team that got after the quarterback as much as many teams that we've seen around here for the last several years. But I think he's got an ability to get to the quarterback, and I'm excited to see it. I would say Kemaju right here. We've talked enough about him in this show, but I think they're going to be varied with their pressure and bring it from a lot of different places. And I think a guy like Bacon can really benefit from that.
Yeah, I'm going to take it in a different direction, and I think that the question of number of sacks is important, but also can be misleading. Who are they going to build the defense around? And I'm just going to stick to the script, and I'm going to go with Yvonne Kemaju because I think he fits the system well enough, and is a guy that they've talked a lot about. Like, they've been very high on him and talked a lot about him this spring, when he was available and not banged up. And to me, like, that's the guy. Going back to something I wrote about yesterday of diving into the players, formations, and plays. What Penn State wants to be on offense and defense is built around that idea that Matt Campbell firmly believes in. It starts with the players. Who do you think are your best players? And then how do you put them in position to succeed with formations and then plays? And so I think Caleb Bacon is a good one. I just think that in order to make all of that work, Yvonne Kemaju has to be a part of the conversation. Nate, what do you think about this?
Yeah, Kemaju. If it's not him, then Granville. It's got to be one of those two.
All right. I love it. Let's get to this question.
I think they have the ability. Like
they do.
Max showed it. It's just, I don't know if he's going to be healthy. That's like, once you get into offshoots, right? So you have an initial injury and then you get other injuries that may or may not be related. I mean, hopefully for his sake, not related. But like it's not his fault. I want to like scream that we're not talking about the made of glass. We're not talking about any of that stuff. It's just if he can't be at the full version and best version of himself, then that throws a wrench in, to what otherwise would be a guy that I would say automatically is like, yeah, he's going to be good. Just don't know.
No, I would agree fully with that. He's one of my favorite prospects they've recruited in a while at that position because of all the things that you're talking about with talent and upward trajectory of like the kid and the effort he puts in plus his talent should result in a great player. And like the injury part is the part that you just can't predict. The
question here is not about who is going to lead the team in sacks. It's going to be how is this sack leader structured, as last year you had Denai with 8.5, and then the next closest thing was Zane with 4. The year before you had Abdul in double digits, and then there was a drop off. Like there's no one guy that's going to go out and get all the sacks. Like, so that's why I think, you throw in a Caleb Bacon, you throw in Kemaju, you throw in Granville, Rojas, you get guys that come from different angles. Zion Tracy has rushed the passer with success at times. So like there's an
Marcus
ability for them to attack from multiple angles, attack from multiple formations, as you said, but I don't know that there's one guy that you're going to turn to go get a game-changing sack. And it's obvious to everyone.
Yeah. Well, Fitz wins. That was the best answer. Like by far. You nailed it. Don't worry, Nate. You got a chance here on this next one. Realistically, now I think we're leading the witness with this question. PSU 7901 wants to know, realistically comparing the current defense to last year's defense, don't you agree that this 2026 defense has a higher ceiling and overall more talent? For the people who are listening on the podcast version, you can't see the 3 question marks, which is a pet peeve of mine. Thank you for the question. 3 question marks just as always. It feels very demanding. So that question, Nate.
Yeah.
What do you think? Do you think 2026 is a better defense with a higher ceiling?
No. And look, last year was a disaster. Okay. Like acknowledged. I think you're allowed to disagree with me. It's okay. My feelings aren't hurt. I think that the defense was, including against Oregon, who was really good. I thought the defense was pretty okay to good in the first 4 games of the season. Dante Moore got away a couple of times.
Given they were put in a rough situation with the overall defense. Yeah.
Correct. And so I think tinfoil hat on here that Tony Rojas getting hurt was a big deal and really threw things sideways when they played a UCLA team that everybody took as a joke, but still had what I consider to be a dynamic quarterback who made plays and had receivers make plays on his behalf. Like that, it was a little bit of a perfect storm. And so
are you saying there's an alternate world where they don't go on a 4-game skid because Tony Rojas doesn't get hurt and they don't lose to UCLA, and therefore they right the ship and they don't lose to Northwestern? Are you saying that that's a possibility if Tony Rojas is healthy?
Yep, I'll say that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they gave up 22 points to Northwest. Like, anyway, I'm constantly relitigating last year, and it doesn't matter at this point. But I have a hard time reconciling. Last year's defense was the national championship defense. Like, that was why everyone was like, oh no, like you lost Abdul Carter, but look at all the guys that came back and how talented they are. Jim Knowles, I know he's the boogeyman now, but like everybody thought he was going to be pretty good and thought he was going to be pretty good specifically because he was armed with cornerbacks that he thought were national championship caliber. He said it. That's a quote. He said national championship caliber. So did that happen? Did they live up to that? Did everything work out the way that they planned? No. However, if it's just paper to paper, you're saying that about this group? I don't like. Yeah. No, I don't think so. And it's not a knock on them. It's just like, let's make the expectations somewhat reasonable for this group.
There's a certain amount of using what we have in terms of we have the answer about last year. We don't have the answer about this year. So we're going to project positivity on 26. And I think that there's some, like, I'll give my thoughts after you, Fitz. What do you think about this?
Well, I mean, the question was asked, does this defense have a higher ceiling and is overall more talented? And I agree with Nate. I don't think it is, but ceiling doesn't matter if you don't reach it. Right. And that's what we're talking about with the 2025 team. So as far overall talent, like last year's defense had a bunch of talent, had a bunch of guys that either were drafted or will be drafted at some point. Now, again, doesn't matter because they didn't reach those heights. Like it was clearly a fall off from the year before. So like in the form of the question, like, no, I don't think it's as talented, but I think they're sort of a wider, they're bigger across the board. There's sort of a wider net of depth that they've got. So you've got more linebackers. So one linebacker gets hurt like last year, you've got a better opportunity to step in. Defensive tackles are bigger. Does that mean they're going to be more dynamic than Zane Durant we saw at times during his career? No, but at the same time, gives you a bit of a safety net that you can stop the run and be okay. Defensive end still kind of on the fence about, but there are certain spots in the secondary. It's very experienced, very talented back there as well. But I'm going back to what I said about the guy that is going to lead the team in sacks. You don't know because you don't know who the super stud that you need to change the game is going to be. Like, could Tony be that? I think so. Like, he's got an opportunity. He's very athletic, very, very good in when he's been healthy. But at the same time, it's just Tyler Warren and Abdul Carter were such a big part of that run in 2024 that we recognized, but at the same time did not recognize just how much they could change in those situations, in those 5 to 10 plays in a season that changed the season. So I'm looking at this defense and saying, who's going to make those plays? And still not quite there. I don't think.
I don't like doing this. And Nate, you already said all these things, but I just want to put the words in my brain to it. I don't like being the guy that said coach's fault because it is a simple and it lacks context and nuance. of the execution of the player, which none of us understand when we're watching football live. We don't know what they're supposed to be doing. So we assume that everything they're doing is what they're supposed to be doing, unless you get obviously beat in a one-on-one situation, like a tackle loses to a defensive end, or a corner in man coverage gets highlighted for being abused by an Ohio State wide receiver. We all understand those things, but we don't understand if a defensive tackle is supposed to be in the A gap or the B gap because we don't know the play. And you also can't see that. Jim Knowles put Zane Durant into the A gap to take on double teams at 280 pounds. So in the chat, everyone's saying if Tony Rojas is injured, then it's not a good defense if you lose Tony Rojas. Yeah, because they had one guy who was above 330 pounds that could stop the run, and he was coming off an injury. Xavier Gilliam is a 300-pound flat defensive tackle who got better in this system, but also couldn't do the things they were asking this scheme to do. So the corners were better, but you had this rotten thing underneath of Zane Durant being put in a bad situation. And by the way, the defensive ends in a lot of situations are crashing in, and basically you're just charging the center. Like, just imagine everyone running towards the football at the snap to clog up all those gaps, and so everyone has to bounce outside, and then Tony Rojas and all the safeties can like trigger downhill and tackle people in the flats. That's generally what the plan was, except for if there's just a giant hole in the middle of the defense. And then suddenly you just have Zakee Wheatley, who's 210 pounds, playing the B gap from 10 yards away, and he's supposed to make the tackle. But here's the thing. He was not supposed to make the tackle with no resistance whatsoever. So yes, last year's defense had a lot of talent that was not properly leveraged on the defensive line specifically. This is a higher floor defense, and I think they've got a good plan, as opposed to last year with the players they have curated for this roster. I don't think that means they're more talented, even if I don't think they're untalented. Again, these binary things of like, well, okay, so this defense sucks. No, it's different, and I think it's more traditional, and I think it's going to work better. But is it going to, as Fitz said, have those splash plays to get you over the top? Nate,
T. Frank,
you get the last word here.
The devil. I'm his advocate. Why were all those players talking about playing outside the bounds of the defense and freelancing and doing things on their own and taking some of that responsibility?
Because they were getting their ass kicked. Because guys were not able to do the job, and so then there's a hole, and what do you do when there's a hole? Like, then you start freelancing because things are going bad.
I just think, well, no, that's fine. That's an accept. There's a beautiful thing about basketball where in real time, you get to watch the coaching staff be beside themselves in misery that the players are not doing the thing that you explicitly told them to do, right? Like, because it's happening. It's right in front of you. You've got a clear view. You see that. In football, you don't necessarily get to see that, but I'm very much under the impression that happens all the time.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's hard. All of this is very hard. And I would like to just communicate that once again, that when your entire existence in success is if this, then that, played at speed, that's really hard to do mentally. That is really, really, really difficult to do. And I think that it would be nice if there was a little bit of leeway afforded those people.
Well, this has been a great show, and we're not wrapping up early. We're just switching gears, and we're getting to an interview with Andy Staples of On3. So this will be the last thing you hear from these guys. Thank you for your time today. We'll be back tomorrow with more in the mailbag. You can go to bluewhiteillustrated.com and you can sign up for access. I'll put up the graphic here in just 1 second. And you can get into the mailbag because we've got recruiting questions coming up later this week. And we also have tomorrow's show, which we can answer your questions there as well. We got some stuff here in the chat. I might clean up at the end, maybe not, because we've got a long conversation with Andy Staples I want to get to. Guys, thank you for your time today. We'll be back tomorrow. But first, here's Andy Staples. One of the best things about being part of On3 and Rivals here at Blue White Illustrated is the access to the immense resources we have, including having some awesome national analysts to have come on the show and talk about Penn State football, give a perspective from both inside and outside of the program. And Andy Staples joining us here on the show. Andy, welcome to BWI Live. I really appreciate your time today.
My pleasure, gentlemen. I use you guys quite a bit. Sean, I bug all the time, and I'm sorry about that. But I do appreciate it. And that's the best part of working it On3 is this incredible network of people. Because, when something happens at a school, I can go, because a lot of times the coaches or the SIDs are not going to tell you exactly what's going on. But we've got guys at the team sites that always know what's going on. And it is very helpful to be able to tap into that network.
Yeah, so we want to start a little bit with some of the big picture kind of from outside the bubble. Fitz and I are here, in the trenches with Penn State fans, talking about and thinking about Penn State from this perspective. And it is really interesting right now with the way Penn State transitioned from James Franklin, the way everything ended, and kind of the new villain there is in James Franklin at Virginia Tech for Penn State fans, and now Matt Campbell coming in and being here. And so there are the dynamics that we understand here, but I don't think even Penn State fans really know how to feel about the 2026 team. Like, we've been doing everything we can through spring football to give them the information, how it's being built, what it's trying to be, and all those things. But I think it's good to get kind of an outside view. What is the perception of Penn State right now after this transition?
Well, I think it's hard to figure out what the team itself is going to be like because they had so many injuries in the spring or guys that were recovering from injuries last season. But, it's really interesting to see how much they brought from Iowa State because obviously they didn't bring the whole team. They brought the people that Matt Campbell and Taylor Mauser and the coaches that came from Iowa State believed could succeed in the Big Ten. And then they had a lot of guys on the roster that you'd want to keep, like the redshirt freshman who's going to start at left tackle. So I live in Gainesville, Florida. Phil Troutwine has returned to his alma mater, and they're over the moon with him because he's actually getting these highly rated offensive line prospects who have these incredible physical tools, which is not something Florida's really gotten in like 10 years. So the fact that Penn State still has a bunch of those guys that were recruited by the previous regime, that the new coaching staff came in and said, hey, you know what? We like what's here. We don't feel like we need to do a complete overhaul on what's here. I think that's really interesting because I think there's a few situations across college football where the new staff comes in and you didn't need to do a complete overhaul. And this is one. There were good players. And Penn State's the kind of place where not everybody's going to go follow the old coach. Like a lot of people are like, no, I wanted to play for Penn State. I wanted to be here. Or I got here and this is home to me. I'm staying. And so I think it's really interesting to see them blending a decent sized group from Iowa State, but not the whole team. He didn't port the whole team.
Yeah, typically what you would see in a turnover like this is top heavy, senior laden guys that would come with them. And they brought a bunch of seniors. But, one of the things that I've looked at in the last couple of months is the guys that they brought with them that were redshirt freshmen, redshirt sophomores. And on top of that, the guys that they were able to retain, like a Malachi Goodman, who's, slated to start at left tackle, Garrett Sexton, Olin Alicini, young offensive linemen, got guys where you're going to continue their line of development at positions that need to be ironed out and developed. And I think that that's one of the endearing things of this roster. And yes, I think it's going to be a multi-year build with the portal. Like they're going to go to the portal more next year than they typically would in every other year except last year. But at the same time, maybe not as much as they would have had to in a typical transition. So I think that that's been interesting to watch, and you stack this roster from an eligibility standpoint, and it looks much better than really it could have been. And that's a testament to the job that they did with retention. I think that's a testament that they've done with adding guys that are in the middle of their career rather than at the very beginning or at the very end. And it's not something you see everywhere. And on top of that, they didn't lose as many young guys as I think that a lot of these transitions, when the young guys are still in love with the previous coaching staff, not everybody followed James.
But I think Penn State is the kind of place where, everybody wants to play for the coach they signed for, but there's a lot of people that will stay for the school that wanted to come play for the school or got to the school and felt like that was the right place for them. Michigan's the same deal. You didn't see a mass exodus in Michigan. after Sharon Moore got fired. When Kyle Whittingham came in, he basically liked what he saw and was like, hey, we can keep most of this. And, you're at Michigan. Just because your coach left doesn't mean you want to leave. Say you're at Penn State. Just because your coach got fired doesn't mean you want to leave.
Andy, what are the mirror situations there for Michigan? Like, you've seen a lot of, kind of similar themes throughout the last 5 months or so when you talk about Michigan and Penn State and the way that they want to build. Kyle Whittingham's kind of got the same type of reputation as Matt Campbell in terms of a builder, in terms of evaluator. So what have you seen mirrored there? And what have you seen that, maybe strikes you as different?
Well, we were thinking about this from a sliding doors perspective the other day. Let's say the timing works out differently on when Whittingham gets chased out at Utah. I could easily see a scenario where Whittingham is Penn State's coach and Matt Campbell is Michigan's coach. Yeah. Like, I don't think that's that far-fetched. Right. And certainly if Campbell had been available when Michigan opened, he would have been one of the first calls. So I think they're very similar situations, other than obviously James Franklin didn't do anything wrong other than lose games. It was, right. Sharon Moore's situation was far worse. And I do think that probably helped maybe Michigan with the retention piece of it, because it wasn't my coach is going somewhere else. He wasn't going anywhere else. He was done. Mm-hmm. And James Franklin was going somewhere else, and it's actually not, you can drive there. And so there were players who wanted to go follow that coaching staff. So I think, but they're very similar in that there were good players already there, especially on the line of scrimmage, who wanted to, were in various stages of development, and they kept a bunch of them.
Yeah, that was a huge win off the top for a team. As you mentioned, like, it is a blending of the two teams together, and it feels like they pulled the strengths of those two together. So it's an interesting opportunity for next season, and I think that's another thing. Curious of your thoughts about when it comes to the Penn State schedule and some of the other teams that you may know about. Again, like, we're watching Penn State. We're in here talking about Penn State. Some of the guys, some of the teams on their schedule, I'm interested to what you think of, a little bit about Michigan, maybe some of the other, maybe a trap game on the schedule, some team that you think is doing good stuff in the Big Ten that is a little bit under the radar right now.
Well, I think Penn State got the best draw of anybody in terms of the Big Ten schedule. This is a year where Ohio State has, I would say, its hardest schedule it's probably its hardest Big Ten schedule in the modern era. USC's Big Ten schedule is so rough that they got out of the Notre Dame game for it. Michigan's Big Ten schedule is tough. Oregon's Big Ten schedule is tough. So I think
you're going to find a lot of State in this part of the country, by the way, for those things.
Oh, I know. That's the thing. Penn State spent a lot of years getting blocked by Ohio State and Michigan in the Big Ten East, and so it's okay if it comes around a little bit. I do wish Penn State had a better non-conference game. It's kind of soft to not schedule good non-conference games. You're not
super interested in Buffalo and Marshall?
Hey, the SEC's playing non-conference games now, so that little crutch has been wiped out, and they're still playing good non-conference games. So, but we'll see if that continues over the years. But no, the one thing that, like, the Big Ten opener against Wisconsin, I find Wisconsin very interesting this year because
they went to the portal hard, right?
They did, and so it was basically a decision of, do you fire Luke Fickell or do you fund Luke Fickell? And they decided to fund him. And like Chris McIntosh, who's the outgoing AD, he's taking a job at the Big Ten office. He said when they decided to keep Luke Fickell, he's like, look, this is my fault. I didn't handle the dawn of the NIL era properly. I did not fund the roster properly. Don't put this all on Luke Fickell. That is noble to say. We don't know if that's the entire truth. We're going to find out, because you did hear in this offseason, in the portal cycle, and in the recruiting out of high school situation, that Wisconsin was making much more competitive offers than they'd made in prior years. So the question is, can that team be better? And I will take you back to the end of last season. After they said Fickell was coming back, they got better. They played hard. Like, that Washington game, I mean, it was not easy on the eyes, but the fact that they won that game was pretty incredible. And I think it gave me a little bit of hope for what Wisconsin can be. Now, look, you guys are going to know really what Wisconsin is from a talent standpoint after week 1, because they're going to play Notre Dame at Lambeau Field. And if Notre Dame just blows them off the field, Penn State should feel pretty confident going into that game. If Wisconsin hangs with Notre Dame, then get ready, strap up, because maybe they did improve that roster. And it's interesting because that first couple weeks of Big Ten play. So remember, 6-day week, then they go to Northwestern on a Friday. Northwestern beat them last year, so they already know. Like, David Braun has made Northwestern a really tough out. And now they got Chip Kelly calling plays. I don't know if I believe in Aiden Childs as a quarterback. We saw him at Michigan State. We saw him get benched at Michigan State. But that team has shown you since David Braun took over for Pat Fitzgerald that they're always going to be well coached. They're always going to be where they're supposed to be. So, like, I don't like the idea of playing them on the road on 6 days rest.
At a new stadium. Yeah. There's going to be some juice in that one.
Is that the opening of the stadium, by the way?
The opening of the stadium.
Okay. Yeah. Because I knew they played a couple games before they move in.
Yeah. No, it should be fun. You were looking here, and I don't want to, shine you up too much, but when we got on here, you said, I just got done looking at Iowa State offensive film from last year. And kudos to you for doing that. That just shows the type of research that you're willing to do for this. What strikes you about this team that now you know their personnel? Now you have a good idea of their personnel. You have a good idea of what they plan to do because it's the same quarterback and you don't want to stray too far from what you were doing before. How effective can Penn State be on offense in the Big Ten? And what do you think can carry over from what they've done with the guys that they've had?
It's so interesting because as I was watching, I was like, how do Penn State fans feel about a team that really loves to attack with the tight end?
Yeah.
But I feel like with the Penn State, like with the Tyler Warren situation in 2024 and the receiving core they had, it was more out of necessity. Like, you didn't want Tyler Warren to be your only legitimate receiving threat. That wasn't the plan. Yeah. But with Iowa State, you had Brett Eskelson on the outside at receiver, and then you had all these tight ends, and they brought 3 of them. And Brammer is a weapon. Brammer's an absolute weapon. That's what I wanted to ask you.
What do you think of him? Because there are some times where he looks like that downfield threat, and then other times like maybe not the complete full field weapon, but a guy you can build a passing offense around. It seems.
Yeah, and they'll play him attached. They'll play him right next to a tackle and have him block in the run game. And like, all of them seem to be willing blockers. It's a fun offense because I like the offenses that use the tight end a lot because I feel like you can do more with that, especially playing multiple tight ends. So, they bring Brammer, they bring Gabe Burkle, they bring Cooper Alexander. Andrew Rappelia has that body type too. So, I know he was hurt in the spring, but if he's back healthy, that would seem to be another person you could use as a weapon in that way. And so I think that's going to be fun to watch. And we were talking about this before we went on. Taylor Mauser is really tight with Nathan Scheelhaas, who is their former offensive coordinator at Iowa State, who's now with McVay and the Rams. Well, what did the Rams do last year? When they had some injuries at receiver, they started running a lot of 13 personnel, 1 back, 3 tight ends. And the rest of the NFL is trying to copy that this year. College football is trying to copy that this year because there's a reason for it. If you think about how offenses and defenses have evolved. So offenses starting in the early 2000s start to spread out more. You're getting more, single back stuff. The fullback goes away. You're spreading out with 4 receivers on the field at the same time and a back, or 3 receivers, a back, and a tight end. Well, what does that mean? That means you have to get lighter and faster on defense. So the 240-pound middle linebacker goes away. The 230-pound outside linebacker goes away. And all of a sudden, you've got 219-pound outside linebackers and 228-pound middle linebackers. Well, guess what? 228-pound middle linebackers, guess what happens to them when you run 13 personnel? They get murdered in the run game. And so that's why everybody's condensing back down offensively, because defenses have gotten light.
Yeah, and you can then spread them out if they go and play heavy. You can then take a guy like Ben Brammer or Andrew Rappelia, put him in space and create mismatches. So it's the constant back and forth of that is super interesting of how the next turn happens in this situation. A guy that I think I think can be a wild card for Penn State, and I want to get your thoughts on him, is Chase Sowell at outside at X receiver, a guy that was inconsistent last year but flashed some of that like big play ability. Just wanted to get your thoughts on if you think what you saw from him, because it can be in the eye of the beholder on his film in particular, and I'm just curious what you saw.
Well, it just another threat. Like if the offensive is effective, and so you've got Rocco Becht, you've got 3 tight ends who already know the offense. You've got a number 1 receiver who was their number 1 receiver. Now, if you've got another guy who can stress defenses, like when's the last time Penn State had 2 receivers who could stress defenses? I'm not talking take tight ends out of the equation. When is the last time? Are we going back to the Joe Moorhead era? Are we in the Ricky Ronnie era? I can't remember.
Dotson and Parker Washington, but that's not. I mean,
that's a long time ago.
But,
and Washington was banged up half the time. Like that was the struggle there. Yeah.
I mean that's the thing. I think that's fun, especially with what they can do with the tight ends, because that's another. You talk about the cat and mouse game, T. Frank, like, or the push and pull. Like, what if all of a sudden you do go really wide? Or, you're going to run 11 personnel now, and you've got receivers that are stretching the field. You can catch a defense that is spent the entire week prepping for you to attack them with tight ends over the middle. Yeah. And all of a sudden they're unequipped. So that's the thing. Just having that level of athlete is important.
Yeah, we just want to define tight ends as guy at the end of the line that, blocks and then occasionally goes out on a route. I mean, it's over the last 20 years, even it's just changed so sharply that you've baited. This is not the way it's intended, but you've baited defenses into playing spread, getting smaller, and going everywhere. And now it's time that
I just call it Chase's highlights from last year, and it's really interesting. I was one of the plays they're showing him making. It's one of those where you can see the 2 tight ends coming out into the formation at multiple levels, and the whole defense just sort of sucks in on him, and Chase comes out this way, and it's just, I mean, that's how that's supposed to work.
Yeah, and I think they've got the talent to do it. I think Rapplier might be, the best all around guy that they've got, and Brammer. I'm so intrigued to see what translates from what he was able to do at Iowa State, because I think a lot of it can. It's just a matter of him in the right spot, and then
it's very interesting the move up in level, because the Big 12 to the Big 10 is a jump, but it's not a massive jump for a guy who's played a ton of football.
Right.
And I think that's the key. I was reading Stuart Mandel from The Athletic had a really good story on what Kurt Cignetti's done with Indiana. And he talked to Derek Owings, who was the strength coach that came with them from James Madison. And he remembered being shocked when they got there with all the James Madison guys, that the James Madison guys were actually testing athletically better than the Indiana guys. And I don't think that's necessarily what's going to happen with the what has happened with the Iowa State and Penn State guys, because again, the Penn State guys were really good athletes when they recruited them. They're not, they didn't suddenly become not good athletes because the coach got fired. But these guys who've played a ton against pretty good competition in the Big 12, I don't think they're going to feel like they are overwhelmed by what they see in the Big 10, especially given the schedule, because they are seeing USC and Michigan. They're not seeing Oregon. They're not seeing Ohio State. They're not seeing Indiana.
Yeah.
How weird is it that you have to shoehorn Indiana in that sentence now?
I'm not even shoehorning, guys. I learned my lesson last year.
But 2021 Andy Staples does not throw Indiana in there.
Never. No.
Right.
And I got to mention these guys. It's such a weird response that we have now.
Just as a quick shout out to what you're saying here, Andy, we talked about this last week. Notable Big Ten totals for teams that have guys on the consensus 2027 NFL draft board. Indiana has 5, which is more than Ohio State at this point. And to the point of the schedule, Oregon has 10 of them. So just a stacked group of teams that are not on Penn State's schedule for next year.
You know who else is not on it? And this is one that I've enjoyed their games through the years. I'm sure Penn State fans have not. No Iowa.
Yeah.
I think Iowa could be very scary this year. I mean, they pushed so many good teams to the absolute limit last year, and then they go beat 10-win Vandy in the bowl game.
Yeah, I think you know what you're going to get there. In terms of, I don't know about ceiling, but like I think it's very similar to what Penn State is going to try to do, I think. But I'm curious what the results are. You mentioned the athleticism. I don't think that that's a part that we're probably talking about enough with guys that they've got, not just on the outside, because I think your starting receivers are going to mostly come from Iowa State, and those two in Eskildson and Chase Sowell, but especially up front. And that's where you kind of mix and match, especially on the D line. They went to UCLA, Utah, Oklahoma State for Armstrong Nadim, who is a guy that's really emerging as a guy that I love. I think he can do multiple things for you. So
I kind of wish they'd have been able to bring Dominique Orange, that he hadn't been out of eligibility. That would have been fun.
He was the most fun player to watch for sure.
Yeah.
So I just think that the athleticism and the size that they're bringing in is just it's such a different dynamic, because I think that when you take a look at what James Franklin did to try to get to the top of the Big Ten, was to go at Ohio State and try to emulate what they're doing and try to build your team to stop them. And then all of a sudden Michigan turns it on its head, wins a national championship by doing the opposite. And it's like, oh, maybe you can do this, because that's
right. And the difference is Ohio State had good enough athletes that they could switch and try to play that way if they needed to.
Yeah.
Penn State
that's been
didn't
the
necessarily have that. Yeah.
That's been the most interesting thing to watch Ohio State go through, this like 2 tight end revolution from wide receiver U to people are like, are they just practicing their run game for half a game? And then they decide, oh no, now we're going to throw it to the aliens on the outside and win 38-14.
And now,
and the funny thing is, like, think about how Ohio State last year, Max Clare was their 3rd leading receiver.
Yeah.
And listen, that's just the way football's gone. Like, if you're not using your tight end effectively, you're leaving yards and points on the table.
Last question for you, because it's come up recently and we haven't really discussed it. I'm curious as your thoughts on the 2014 playoff expansion, which has been getting momentum. Yeah.
No, I don't know. Look, 12 has been fun for 2 years. Let's just see what happens for a few more years. Let's let it breathe a little bit, because I do think it's interesting that the sport is spreading out. There are more teams now that can compete for the national title for sure than there were 5-10 years ago. And if that continues, if you get to the point where you feel like you've got 20 teams that can compete for the national title, then do it. But you're not there yet. I do, like, last year, Notre Dame gets left out. It is entirely possible Notre Dame could have gone through the 12-team playoff and won the national title last year. That's a real punishment for losing. Like, when a team that might be able to win gets left out. That means you're at the right number.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. And the number has not expanded so dramatically to include, like, because at this point at 24 teams, like most teams are getting in. Like, if we were having this conversation, can Penn State make the playoff? So obviously, yes. Yeah.
Go to On 3. I had a column that came out Sunday where I showed you what the field would have looked like in 24 and 25 with the 2014 playoff. And boy, guys, I hope you're ready for that North Texas, Alabama first round game. Are you ready for that? You ready for Tulane, Texas?
People are going to watch it.
Yeah.
I mean, for the most part.
I didn't watch James Madison, Oregon very much.
Yeah,
that was a 12-team.
I didn't watch it at all.
I did, but mostly for the.
There was a really good Bears game on that.
Right. Yeah. Andy, we have about 6 topics we didn't get to. I would have loved to pick your brain about NIL or a bunch of other things. We got to have you on later, because this has been a lot of fun. Yes,
it's a long off season, gentlemen. We have plenty of time to talk.
Andy Staples, host of Andy and Ari with Ari Wasserman on YouTube at 3 p.m. Mondays through Thursday. Man, you're going 4 days a week.
No, Monday through Friday. Monday through Friday in the off season. Monday through Thursday in the season, because we have a Saturday night show after the games.
All right. Well, you can catch them daily on YouTube. Appreciate you being here, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, gentlemen.